do find it unusual being invited to play a role and being asking for help with the role. So the partner doing the echo mantras felt it was a turning point to get treated as a couple. So, we talk about that it's so important for the parents themselves to have their own oxygen so that they can manage the stress that they are faced with. So by giving them some information and some skills, that can be their oxygen so that then they can help the individual. And we've been trying to experiment with different sorts of intervention. So this is a systematic review looking at the impact on various, this is on carer burden. So the first one is just self-help alone. Then this is a workshop. This is self-help plus guidance and online. And you can see that perhaps the workshop is a bit better than self-help alone. But with guidance, that gets a bit better. So we're getting small and moderate reductions in burden with these various quite cost-effective ways of delivering them. And this is the parent distress. And again, you can see that the guidance with the self-help seems to give a bigger effect than perhaps the workshop alone and self-help alone. But they're all showing some help, but it's a question of practicalities, what you can set up. So I talked about how you need a model, how you need to keep testing it, how you need to tweak it, and perhaps change your model to understand it. So we've been working very hard to get evidence for these predisposing and perpetuating aspects of the model so we can have parents coming on side and explaining some of these effects of the illness, the effects on social cognition, etc. And then we've done this feasibility and piloting with mantra and echo, and showing that we are getting some effectiveness there. And we've been thinking of ways of implementing them in ways that can be disseminated easily with online books and information. So, to conclude, a bit dramatic, I hope I've convinced you how eating disorders do have a profound effect on carers, whether it's us as professionals, but also for family members, and these often mirror each other. What we find is that carers usually want to be included, and it's very helpful to include those as collaborators. And we can share the skills and information we have because it gives long-term benefits in these illnesses that cause a huge burden for the individual and for society. So this just shows some of we've done a lot of our guidance with carers themselves, and there are some carers in this group who have started running the workshops themselves, which is really good. This is an extra book on emotion focused, which is very helpful for getting reflections. Good. Okay, any questions or comments? So that's the end of the talk.
Could I just ask?
Yeah.
You developed the EdSys, didn't you?
Yeah.
Are you still using that?
Yes, we've not. I don't know whether we are using it in Triangle at the moment. I think we perhaps are. That's the specific questionnaire with burden for carers. Yes.
So that's the ones you use at the moment.
Yeah. Yes, because you don't want to burden them too much, and so we've been developing new questionnaires. And I'm not an expert on developing questionnaires, so our accommodation one, I'm sure really needs to be made better, but I mean, we did the best we could with it. And similarly, the EdSys, I'm sure that they could be refined. And probably there's other dimensions that should get looked at. The EdSys is the trying to look at, well, as you perhaps know if you're using it, the burden of the different aspects of caregiving.
Yeah. Because you know, Beat did a survey of carers
Right.
a few years ago. Well, they asked me to design the questionnaire. I put the EdSys into it.
Yeah.
And so we've got about 2,000
Oh, right.
carers. But no one picked it up from here. So
Oh dear,
it's
disgusting. And they could have a wonderful project, couldn't
it's
they?
waiting to be
Yes, all the data there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be very interesting, wouldn't it?
Mm.
Because you could look at the different sorts of eating disorders and see
Yes.
if bulimic's different. Yeah.
Because it was primarily looking at delays in treatment.
Yes, and the factors that cause the burden. So there you are. If you haven't got a project yet, or tell the next year.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions or comments?
Do you mind if I ask? Sorry,
No. Yeah.
But there's this whole controversy about whether one's allowed to say that the family is important in the etiology or the course of eating disorders.
Yeah.
And you know, there was this paper a few years ago where it was like a position paper from the
Academy, yeah.
Academy, where they're saying there was no evidence that you know there's any cause. Which I mean, I don't know. I just feel that it's a whole area which is really important.
Yeah.
Which was sort of been warned off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you feel that?
Yes, I think, well, there was one particular man who was really vicious in sort of sending, if you wrote anything that indicated that carers, you know, might have any causal thing, you know, he would be on you like a ton of bricks. But on the other hand, they don't seem to worry about the genetic causes, which are now very well established. So they seem to have assimilated, and indeed Feast, who have a bit of a mixed feeling about it, I think, and can be quite vociferous. You know, the lady who died, Charlotte's Helix, wanted to have the genetics looked at. So I think that people have different opinions about it. So I mean, so some people do think that I'm parent bashing, and indeed I am saying that reactions can keep the illness going longer, but I hopefully modify that by saying we all do this. It happens on our inpatient unit, so I'm not, you know, it's a natural, the social system, this is what happens. And, you know, compared to things like doing chronic fatigue, I think there is usually a better relationship with our carers, and they seem, and as I say, they teach this model very happily, and they don't, as I said, they might be in the early stages, oh, have I got to change, have I got to do things, they feel, you know, that's not fair, I want to know how to get my daughter better, but then they gradually see that and are quite happy to sort of perhaps try and do some of these changes themselves.
I mean, the fact that they come to the meetings and be supported suggests that they want to change.
Yes.
They want to know
how to do it. Yes, I think so. But I mean, so much of it is how you explain things, and so I think that, and of course because all of the books have been written with people with experience or their parents, and I've started training with them, then that stops you making inadvertent bloomers that can sort of step on corns, I think. Yeah.
Can I just ask how widespread is the availability of the training?
Well, Beat has really taken it up, although, you know, they've got this thing called Echo, which is what I called it, and they don't directly say, but it's the same thing. Yeah, they've borrowed it from me.
It was straight from you.
It is really, but I mean, it was never. I mean, I don't mind. That's fine, but it is from me. So they're doing that because we've had several goes at that, and so like there's Jenny Langley who's been teaching and she teaching carers for 5 years, and she's got this house in Sevenoaks, and she's made the attic into a training room with a lovely table and chairs, so that she can train. So she's been phenomenal. And then there are some other outposts. But of course, there's always, people, carers are wonderful to work with, and they often do devote a long time of their life. And as I say, we've worked a lot with patients themselves who've recovered. But I do think for patients themselves, although they're good and great, but they do need to move on. So carrying on helping us after they've recovered their illness, I think that's what you want to see them doing to flourish in other areas. But we have some who come every now and again to the carers' workshops and really contribute. The parents just find having that authentic voice very important. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why in the triangle study, what we've done, we've got lots of little vignettes of patients, so they don't have to come physically. And I think that's a good compromise to get that authentic voice, but so they don't have to be, putting so much time in. But often people who've recovered are so generous with their help, and the parents too.
Isn't the Beat one an online service or a telephone?
Telephone, yeah. Yes.
Has that been tested? Is that effective?
Well, it's what we did at first, telephone, yes. I think the workshops, Jenny does the face-to-face workshops, and I think that's really helpful, people working together and listening to each other's ideas and producing solutions, and that's what we've adapted Triangle for. So we do online chats with us topics. So we show a video of somebody who's recovered and said what they did, and then or perhaps it's a carer showing a skill, and we show those videos and then ask the carer to notice and ask the carer to come up with, what do you do, what solutions work for you, and they run extremely well. So we're getting people from all over the country sort of and join this chat line, and they're really productive. So it saves them. I mean, they still have to be putting other children to bed and all the things they have to do as well, but it seems to work well.
And the triangle is you, the carer, and the patient?
Yes. But it's also been used by the government to talk about carers as well, hasn't it? Yeah. The triangle of care, which is probably the same thing. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? You can't have just Paul answering all the questions.
We've had a heavy day.
Yeah, in this airless room.
You spoke at the very beginning about when you speak to parents and they speak about like ambivalence at patients and what have you. Is there ever, I suppose from your own experience as a clinician, when you sat with a child that maybe don't want to change, that you obviously might not feel that sort of uncontrollable urge to just say, like, look, you need to change. How do you try it? I suppose, how do you get the parents to try and override that feeling of just, because I suppose because it's their child and they're closest to the child, there's that possibility that they might lash out and be a little bit more sort of bullish towards it. What sort of advice is it that you give around that to try and sort of limit, to try and stop that happening?
Friction. Yeah. Well, we talk about, how there is this natural reaction. The more you're told to do something that you don't want to do, the more, you get cussed. And so there are lots of examples of that. So explaining that, and we do, teaching these skills of motivational interviewing is very useful, because that's been developed with alcoholism, and people don't want to change, they don't think they're alcoholic, and it's how you have those conversations. So those give really good skills of doing it. Because what they find is that the more, I'm just looking because this friend of mine's going to she won't say. So the more you tell them to do it, they've been able to track the conversations and show that it builds up resistance. And so Bill Miller's work is really important. So that is giving open questions, sort of giving double-sided reflections, but trying to, so all the time you're not telling them what to do, you're trying to elicit from them the reasons why they want to change.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have you found it's any more effective in a particular group? So for instance, whether it's most effective with parents or partners, or whether it works best with people who work with inpatient sufferers?
Yeah, we don't really know, and we'd love to sometimes think perhaps separating partners from others, and in fact Cindy Buick did tried to target just partners with We Can, but you get such small numbers.
Because it strikes me as the kind of thing that would be really effective, particularly on adolescents and young people,
Yeah.
with parents,
Yeah.
but perhaps might not work quite so well if the sufferer is an adult,
Yeah.
and they've got, I don't know whether sometimes some of the things could come across as quite patronising perhaps,
Yeah.
if it's coming from your partner and someone of
Yeah.
equal age, and I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's what struck me.
It does. I mean, the sort of things that get said in these workshops with partners, it does seem to work, and they are able to change things. And in fact, Student Minds was set up in universities. I don't know if any of you have heard about it. It's set up by somebody from Nottingham, which is now working at King's. And so they almost adapted it by trying to get peer students to do some of these approaches, to do the motivational interview, to the fact that your peers could support you. So I think it can generalise, but as you say, the exact
Depends on the
dynamics
person.
are bound to change by a bit too.
We'll let you get your lift now.
Well, it's not, well, maybe she wasn't there, but at 12 she was going to go. She did. It's not
Thank you very
a
much.
fair. Thanks,
We'll
Paul.
see you Friday.
See you next Friday.
Yeah.
Lovely.